In love, in fear. The secret that broke us. It had been 7 years since David and Kevin first met. 7 years of undeniable chemistry, shared laughter, and deep conversations that could stretch on for hours. They shared secrets, confided in each other, and lived their lives with an unspoken understanding. From the first day they locked eyes at the university cafeteria, a bond formed that was impossible to ignore. They did everything together: late-night talks, weekend getaways, quiet movie nights. To the outside world, they were the perfect pair. But beneath the surface, there was something more: a quiet, simmering tension. David had been Kevin's constant source of comfort and joy, but also his greatest source of frustration. Kevin had always worn his heart on his sleeve, making his feelings clear, but David kept him at arm's length. It wasn't for lack of attraction or affection. Kevin could see it in David's eyes, feel it in the way his fingers would linger a little too long when they touched. It was something else, something buried deep within him, holding him back. After years of unspoken words and longing, Kevin couldn't take it anymore. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset from David's apartment rooftop, the warmth of the moment pushed Kevin over the edge. "I can't keep pretending anymore, David," Kevin blurted out, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. His voice was thick with emotion. "I'm in love with you. I've been in love with you for years. Why won't you let us be together?" David's heart raced in his chest. He felt like he'd been punched, but he knew this moment was inevitable. Kevin had been patient, far more patient than anyone else would have been, but he was right to want more. David had sensed it coming. This was the moment he feared the most. "I can't, Kevin," David said softly, his voice barely audible. He couldn't look Kevin in the eye, couldn't bear to see the hurt he knew was forming in his best friend's face. "Why?" Kevin demanded, his voice rising, full of frustration and heartbreak. "We've been dancing around this for years. We're perfect for each other, David. You know it too, I can feel it." David clenched his fists, trying to keep the tears from spilling over. His silence made Kevin lean forward, searching for answers in his friend's face. "Why?" Kevin asked again, softer this time, his voice trembling. "Why won't you let me love you?" David finally turned to Kevin, his face pale and his lips trembling. He had never wanted to share this part of himself, especially not with Kevin. But he could see no other way out. "I have HIV. The words hit Kevin like a physical blow. He blinked, stunned, unable to process what he had just heard. The world seemed to tilt around him. All the hopes and dreams he had built up in his mind for years came crashing down in an instant. David continued, his voice barely holding together. "I found out 3 years ago. I've been living with it ever since. That's why I've been keeping you at a distance, Kevin. I didn't want you to fall in love with me because I didn't want to hurt you. I'm scared of what you'll think of me now." Kevin stared at him, his heart pounding in his chest. He had no idea what to say. His mind was racing, 1,000 thoughts colliding all at once: fear, anger, confusion. The man he loved had been carrying this secret for years, and now it all made sense. The distance, the hesitation, the reluctance. But instead of finding comfort in knowing the truth, Kevin felt betrayed. He wanted to hold David, to tell him it didn't matter, that they could work through it together. But instead, fear took over. Kevin stood up abruptly, his hands shaking. I need some time," he stammered, avoiding David's gaze. He turned and walked away, leaving David alone on the rooftop, the sunset now casting long shadows over the city. The days turned into weeks, and then months. Kevin kept his distance. He couldn't bring himself to face David, not after what he had learned. The fear of HIV had planted a seed of doubt in his mind, and every time he thought about going back to David, that fear pushed him away. David, on the other hand, was devastated. He had known this would happen. He had feared it for so long, and now the reality of it was even worse than he had imagined. The silence from Kevin felt like a knife twisting in his gut. He had lost his best friend, the man he loved, and the hope of ever being truly happy. One evening, after nearly 3 months of avoiding each other, they met again by accident. Kevin was leaving a bookstore when he saw David standing across the street, talking to someone else. David saw him too, their eyes meeting for the briefest of moments before Kevin turned and walked in the opposite direction. But David wasn't about to let him leave so easily this time. "Kevin, wait," David called, rushing after him. Kevin stopped but didn't turn around. His heart pounded in his chest. He didn't want to do this, not now, not after all this time. "Why did you run away from me?" David's voice was thick with emotion as he caught up. "I told you the truth, Kevin. I was honest with you. And you just left." Kevin turned to face him, his eyes full of conflict. "What was I supposed to do, David? You dropped a bomb on me. I didn't know how to deal with it." David looked at him with a mixture of anger and hurt. "You could have talked to me. I needed you, Kevin. I needed you more than ever, and you just disappeared. I get that it was a shock, but you didn't even give me a chance." Kevin felt a wave of guilt wash over him, but there was something else too, something darker. "I didn't know how to handle it, David. I was scared, and part of me still is." David's face fell. He had hoped Kevin would say something different, something that would heal the wound between them. But the truth was out now, and it was more painful than he had imagined. "I get it," David said, his voice breaking. I guess I hoped you'd be different. That you'd accept me, but I understand. I really do." Kevin stood there, feeling the weight of David's words pressing down on him. He wanted to take it all back, to tell David that he loved him despite everything. But he couldn't. Fear had already built too strong a wall between them. "I can't do this," Kevin finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." David felt his heart shatter in that moment. He had known this was coming, but hearing the words out loud made it all the more real. There was nothing left to say. Kevin turned and walked away, leaving David standing in the middle of the street, alone once again. Months passed, and David slowly began to pick up the pieces of his life. It wasn't easy, but he found solace in his work and in the friends who stood by him. One day, while at a support group for people living with HIV, he met someone new, Daniel. Daniel had a warmth and understanding that immediately put David at ease. They clicked almost instantly, sharing stories of their struggles and their fears. But there was something else too, something that felt like hope. Daniel didn't see David's HIV status as a deal-breaker. He didn't flinch or run away when David told him his story. Instead, Daniel embraced him, flaws and all, showing David that love could still exist, even in the face of fear. As their relationship blossomed, David realized that the love he had once longed for with Kevin had been rooted in fantasy, a fantasy of perfection and a love without complications. But real love, he learned, was messy and imperfect. And with Daniel, he found that love was still possible, even after heartbreak. One evening, as they lay together, watching the stars from Daniel's apartment balcony, David felt a sense of peace wash over him. For the first time in a long time, he felt free, free from fear, free from rejection, and free to love again. A few months after Kevin and David's separation, though time had passed, the guilt Kevin carried refused to fade. He had tried to convince himself that leaving was the right choice, that the fear and confusion he had felt were justified. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized he had made the biggest mistake of his life. David had been nothing but honest with him, vulnerable, raw, and open about the burden he carried with his HIV status. And what had Kevin done? He had run away when David needed him most, too scared to confront his own emotions. Now, the regret weighed heavy on him like a chain around his heart. One evening, after weeks of self-reflection, Kevin made a decision. He was going to reach out to David, apologize, and do whatever it took to win him back. He couldn't let fear define him, not anymore. He had let David slip away, but this time, he would fight to make things right. Kevin waited outside David's apartment, rehearsing the words in his head. The nerves rattled his insides, but he pushed through. He knocked gently, his heart racing as he heard footsteps approaching. The door swung open, and there stood David, his eyes widening in surprise. "Kevin," David said, his tone guarded. "What are you doing here?" Kevin swallowed hard. "David, I came to talk. Please, can we talk?" David hesitated for a moment before stepping aside, allowing Kevin to enter. The air between them was thick with tension as Kevin stepped inside, memories of their shared moments flooding back. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "I know I have no right to ask for your time, but I need to tell you how sorry I am," Kevin began, his voice trembling. "I was a coward. I let my fear and ignorance get the best of me, and I hurt you. I should have been there for you, David. I should have stayed." David remained silent, his expression unreadable. Kevin's heart sank as he continued, "I've been thinking about you every single day since I left. I miss you. I miss us. I want to make things right. Please, give me another chance." For a moment, it seemed as though the weight of Kevin's words hung in the air, begging for some kind of release. David, however, remained calm and composed, though there was a sadness in his eyes. "Kevin," David finally spoke, his voice soft but firm, "I appreciate that you're here, and I can see that you're sorry. But things have changed." Kevin blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" David sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've moved on, Kevin. After you left, I was heartbroken. I felt completely abandoned. I thought about you every day, wondering if you would come back, but you didn't. I had to pick up the pieces of my life without you, and eventually, I found someone who accepted me, someone who didn't run when I told them about my status." The realization hit Kevin like a punch to the gut. You're with someone else." "Yes," David replied, his gaze steady. "His name is Daniel, and he's been there for me in ways I never thought possible. He accepted me for who I am without hesitation, without fear. We've built something real." Kevin's throat tightened, the emotions swirling inside him like a storm. But I love you, David," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I was scared before, but I've changed. I can be better, I swear. Please, don't shut me out." David shook his head slowly, a mixture of pity and frustration in his eyes. "Kevin, it's not that simple. You didn't just hurt me when you left, you betrayed me, you abandoned me when I needed you the most. And no matter how sorry you are now, I can't just forget that." Kevin's heart sank. He wanted to argue, to beg, to plead for forgiveness, but he knew deep down that David was right. He had left David when he was most vulnerable, and there was no erasing the damage that had been done. "Can't we at least try again?" Kevin asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "I'll do anything to make it right. I'll prove to you that I've changed." David's expression softened, but his resolve remained. "I don't doubt that you've changed, Kevin. But trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's hard to repair. I've already found someone who loves me unconditionally. I'm happy now, and I'm not willing to jeopardize that for something that's in the past." Kevin's chest tightened, the weight of David's words crashing down on him. He had come here with hope, but now that hope was slipping away. He had lost David not just because of the mistakes he made, but because David had moved on to something better, something more stable and secure. "But we were friends for so long," Kevin said, his voice shaking. "Doesn't that mean anything?" "Of course it does," David replied gently. "You'll always be important to me, Kevin. We shared a lot of memories, and I'll never forget that. But I can't be with you, not after everything that's happened." Kevin's eyes stung with unshed tears. "So what now? Are we just supposed to pretend none of this ever happened?" David shook his head. "No, I don't want that. We can still be friends, Kevin. I'll always care about you, but that's all it can be, just friends. I've moved on with my life, and you need to do the same." Kevin felt his heart break all over again. He wanted to fight, to cling to the possibility that they could still be together. But he could see in David's eyes that it was over. The love they once had, the potential that had been there, was gone, replaced by something that could never be the same. "Friends," Kevin repeated, the word tasting bitter in his mouth. "That's all we can be." David nodded. "Yes, that's all we can be." For a long moment, the two of them stood in silence, the weight of their shared past and the reality of their present hanging between them. Kevin felt the finality of it settle deep in his chest, the loss cutting through him like a knife. "I'm sorry," Kevin said again, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know," David replied, offering a small, sad smile. "And I forgive you, but that doesn't change what's happened. You made your choice when you walked away, and I've made mine now." Kevin nodded, even though his heart was screaming for him to protest, to fight for what they once had. But deep down, he knew it was time to let go. "I wish you the best, David," Kevin said quietly, turning toward the door. "You too, Kevin," David replied, his voice full of sincerity. "Take care of yourself." As Kevin left David's apartment, a hollow feeling settled in his chest. The man he had loved, the man he had once shared so much with, was now out of reach. He had lost him forever. The days turned into weeks, and though the pain lingered, Kevin eventually found a way to move forward. He threw himself into his work, his hobbies, anything to keep his mind from drifting back to David. But there were still moments when he would think about what could have been, moments when he wished he had been stronger, braver. David, on the other hand, continued to build his life with Daniel. They traveled together, laughed together, and grew together in ways that David had never thought possible. With Daniel, David felt whole, safe, and cherished. And though the pain of his past with Kevin remained, it no longer haunted him. He had found love, true, unconditional love, and that was all he needed. As for Kevin, he eventually accepted that some things just aren't meant to be. He had loved David, but love wasn't always enough. Sometimes, timing, circumstances, and choices mattered more. And though it hurt to lose David, Kevin knew he had learned a valuable lesson. Love could never thrive in the shadow of fear and betrayal. In the end, both David and Kevin found their own paths, one in the arms of new love, and the other in the painful but necessary process of healing. And though their story had ended, it was clear that both of them had grown from the experience, carrying the lessons learned with them into the future. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Like, comment, and share this video with your queer friends. Invite them to follow the channel so they don't miss out on more amazing content.